Welcome to Unjammed, the software strategy series for print leaders, brought to you by GelatoConnect. If you're a print service provider who's felt frustrated by software that overpromises and underdelivers, then this series is for you. Whilst many printers have invested heavily in building their own systems, software development is moving faster than ever, and staying up to date and competitive requires more time than many PSPs can spare. So, in just 5 short lessons, you'll get the clarity, tools, and confidence you need to take control of your production setup without needing to become a tech expert. I'm Ellie. I'm the product marketing lead here at GelatoConnect. We spend a lot of time talking to print businesses of all sizes about their day-to-day challenges, especially when it comes to software. And what we hear again and again is that print providers have already invested in a lot of tools, but it still feels really hard and complex. So that's what today's episode is all about. And to help us break that down, I'm joined by Rick Bellamy. He's managing director at Inflecton. And he works with business leaders in the print industry to sustainably grow their businesses, also profitably. He has built a career in graphics technology and spent years working with print service providers around the world. He has created and been inside the tech stacks of some of the most successful PSPs and seen where even smart, well-equipped teams can run into trouble. So welcome, Rick. Before we dive in, it would be great if you could please introduce yourself and speak a bit to your experience in the print industry.
Sure. Thanks, Ellie. I'm happy to be here. Yes, as your intro says, I've made a career out of graphics technology since a very early time in the industry. I've led 4 companies, grown those companies, transacted over 11 transactions, both selling companies as well as acquiring companies. And today I run my own consulting company and work with print service providers around the world, as you mentioned, helping them create their triple bottom line. So how do you create an engaging culture in a way that grows your profits and makes your operations more effective and gives back to the planet on a sustainable basis? So happy to be here.
Amazing. Well, it's so great to have you here. As I mentioned in the intro, we hear from PSPs across the industry that there's a lot of complexity when it comes to print industry software and hardware. Every PSP is different, and they all have a special combination of off-the-shelf and internally built applications. They're trying to manage people and processes that have evolved over a long period of time, and they feel that it's really hard and complex, but they're overwhelmed by the thought of changing. Do you recognize this in your experience?
Yeah, absolutely. Print companies today are a rare combination of high service, high technology, machine assisted, customized manufacturing. And we came from a history of craftsmanship. So it's a really challenging business combination, quite frankly. So let's talk about that feeling you mentioned, right? We've got all kinds of tools, we've got a great teams, we've got customers, but operations still feel slow, messy, manual. When the number of tools and the workflows in your business, they slowly multiply over time. Often they're masqueraded as temporary print solutions because doing it the right way would take far too long, and I've got to get my customer implemented, or I've got to fix this process. And your existing tools just don't provide you with the flexibility you need in today's business environment.
Thanks for that, Rick. So in your experience, do you find that there's a turning point for PSPs when this complexity creep becomes impossible for them to ignore?
Yeah, almost always. And it happens as your business grows or as your business changes over time. And it's not like we chose a tool that would purposely get us in trouble and was purposely inflexible. It often starts as a really strong foundation, becomes this fragile web of tangled tools and processes. And it's not a surprise when you look at the transformation that's happening in the industry. Increasingly, brands are using software platforms to manage their marketing communication, of which print is part of. These technology platforms like Flow or Hybel or Salesforce Marketing Cloud or HubSpot, combined with a big move to e-commerce ordering for many companies, is changing how PSPs acquire and service customers. They previously were serving individual companies, and they still are in many cases, but in many cases, their customers are these aggregators of content. And these aggregators of content require direct integration. They require rapid turnarounds for print volume. Yeah. So instead of pricing for projects, suddenly you're pricing for programs. And a small shift in your pricing on a job, hey, not a big deal. Didn't make as much money on that job as I thought. If you're pricing for a program that's a 2-year contract, it can make a big difference in your profitability.
Thanks, Rick. And can you maybe walk us through an example scenario of how this happens and how PSPs find themselves in this situation?
Sure. There's a host of them, but here's a typical one I will run into often. And PSP invests in the MIS. Let's say it's 5 years ago. Built a strong base for them. At the time, they had a core set of requirements based on the type of customers and projects they were serving at the time. But let's say the MIS inventory management was hard to use in the warehouse. Wasn't as mobile as it needed to be. So they created a spreadsheet to manage inventory. It was only going to be a temporary solution at the time, but tech people haven't been able to get to it because they've got other priorities in the business. And then as they grow, shipping becomes more complicated. They get customers with special shipping needs, and no longer they're entering manually the shipping information to have somebody pick it up. So they implement a third-party shipping application. But then a couple of years later, a new requirement surfaces with a new client, so they implement a second shipping application because the first one didn't come up with the requirements they needed for their customer. And then, well, you get the idea. It never ends. Pretty soon you're using your MIS for traditional jobs, something else for inventory, something else for ordering. You've got pre-press with pit stop or easy post to ship station for shipping, and you're switching e-commerce workflows, and your technology team has grown exponentially. And still, most of these applications are not working together. And getting consistent data out of the system is often the hidden big challenge where it's impossible to make better decisions or quick decisions. So your staff are copying and pasting order data, manually updating inventory, re-entering shipping details, manually tracking their projects. You get the idea. It goes on. And you're challenged to produce accurate billing, which is, I hear this often. Or your teams are looking at conflicting reporting data and arguing about which one is correct. So these day-to-day efforts become just part of the job. So you add more people because you're not able to keep up as you're growing customer, and you're adding the same number of people as you are new revenue, which is not good for your profitability. And then when you try to bring in a new customer, it can take weeks or months to enable them into your tangled web of solutions. Which is the best solution for this customer? Well, we have to figure that out, and it will take a long time to get them implemented. So you not only have real costs in terms of more employees and more licensing, but you also have hidden costs in terms of customer and employee satisfaction. Often you see customers saying it's taking too long, or you hear employees go, boy, this is a lot of work to get something done that should be much more simpler. Like one PSP I know has a great team. They have a solid MIS, but they're entering the same job multiple times. Customers would order through their storefront. Customer service would enter into their MIS. So when the job is done, they had to manually update the status on the storefront for the customer and manually submit the billing. This added up to, when we analyzed it, to over 800 hours of wasted time in a year. That's a lot of money.
That's crazy. I think tangled web is a great description for what you've just taken us to. So thank you for that, Rick. And what is one of the most common red flags that you would tell a PSP to look for that maybe signals they've crossed over into too much complexity and it might actually be holding them back?
So I'm a big fan of recognizing patterns, and there's a few patterns that I see over and over in print businesses, but I'll generalize them into probably 3 flags that I see over and over, as you say, right? And I think about this, I ask these kind of questions. What are your legacy tools, and do they still fit the needs of your customers? So often These tools were purchased with an internal view, and they were not purchased necessarily with the shifts in mind that customers are going through today. So if they have limited APIs, then you're working around them, not with them. How many workarounds are required in your operations to go from getting a customer implemented, accepting their orders, producing, shipping, and billing it? When I see spreadsheets all over the organization being used for critical tasks, I know there's issues there. How many single points of failure do you have in your organization? This is a big one. What tools or databases do you have that only one person knows how to fix, or worse, no one still working at your facility knows how to maintain them or fix them? So I also think about what is the percent of revenue you're spending on technology. So, typically it should be around 3 or 4% if you're doing a good job with your tools. If you built too much complexity into your processes, I have seen people spending as high as 10% with developers scrambling to keep legacy systems running, do integration, and keep the systems running behind the curtain, as I like to say. And I think about this. Another one I see a lot is how long does it take you to bring on a new customer? A program from concept to actually recognizing revenue. And for many cases, like I said, that's weeks or months. And you look at each client. Does each client require a different combination of tools and processes? If so, you're probably got too much complexity built in. And are there processes or tools in your organization that are being used to get around these legacy issues? I just was working with a group who chose to implement a storefront outside of their storefront because their storefront was too slow to actually implement it. So even the best companies in the industry struggle with this. Print industry, as I mentioned, is rapidly changing from offset to digital, from craft to manufacturing, from jobs to programs, from mass to personalized, and all in reduced time frames. So until recently, there haven't been any good solutions. So other than to cobble together your own applications or cobble together off the point solutions. And many of those solutions you could buy were created by people like me, who are technical specialists in the industry, but I'm not a real professional software level person. Today, you can, if you add in the complexity and the component of AI that's permeating every aspect of our business, how are you implementing AI in your business? Because I honestly believe if you're not working on it today, that the companies who don't actively embrace it may not survive, but they're certainly not going to thrive. And how do you keep up with changes like this with internally developed or legacy applications? From my perspective, it hasn't been until GelatoConnect that we had a real software company that's focused on our industry. It's critical that we address this as an industry and combat rising costs in our companies. We recently saw an economics report from ITS that said that, we expect in the print industry revenues to increase, but profits to decrease. If you're running right now at a low profit margin, it's critical you address this. So really, you need to go ask yourself and your team, how many tools are we really using today? Are we still relying on spreadsheets to patch gaps in your system? And who are the people that, when they're out, put your company at risk of being able to deliver to your customers? And is the time to bring on a new customer too high? Or am I spending most of my time supporting legacy software? If the answers to these make you cringe slightly, you're not alone. And by the way, Gelato's here to help.
Thanks so much, Rick. I think they're really, really helpful thought starters for print leaders to really start thinking about these questions and how to address this complexity. If you're listening to this and you're nodding your head at everything that Rick is saying, we've actually got something for you that will help you reflect on these questions. And it's called the New Print Reality Scorecard. It's basically a quick self-assessment to help you figure out where your current setup might be introducing complexity, an excess cost, or risk. It helps you to gain complete visibility of your software setup, which is the first step towards regaining control and efficiency. So you can head to gelato.com/connect/strategy to book a short intro call with our team. And so, Rick, it's been really great to have you here today. Thank you for sharing so many insights. Could you summarize maybe your key tips for print providers to help them identify complexity creep?
Here's the takeaway. Complexity creep isn't you or your team's fault. You know, I often hear business leaders go, boy, how did we get here? Who's to blame? It happens to every growing business in every rapidly changing industry, right? Where everybody is dealing with legacy software. And you don't need to rip everything out and start over, even if that was possible. You know, don't get overwhelmed by thinking, gosh, I've got to take everything out and start again. However, it is your responsibility to your customers, to your teams to address it. So how do you do that? Literally go through a typical day in each department's life and identify what's adding value to the customer and where there's waste. Then take that waste that you find and categorize it as people, processes, or technology. Not all waste is based in technology. So where is that waste in your organization and how do you categorize it? And often you'll find that what you thought as a leader was people or process does turn out to be technology issues that they're just simply finding ways to work around. And then finally, develop a vision of what the people, the processes, and the technology should be and a roadmap to get there. So prioritizing the highest value areas in order to tackle those quickly. That starts to build momentum in your organization and get you to where you need to be in terms of simplifying your processes and simplifying your business.
Thank you so much, Rick. That was a really clear breakdown of something that often can go unnoticed for years until it then starts to cause real pain, which we've seen. So if you're listening to this and you're curious how other PSPs are simplifying those messy systems without ripping everything out, our team can walk you through how they're doing it and what might apply to you. So you can head to GelatoConnect.com/strategy to book a short intro call with our team. In the next episode, we're going to be looking at the flip side. So what actually happens when the tools themselves are the problem? Our SVP of Product, Pradeep, here at GelatoConnect is going to walk us through some of the red flags to watch for with software tools and how to decide what to fix first. So thank you for listening and see you next time.